Welcome to this episode of ComSpeak. Our guest today is Archana Jain. Archana is the founder and managing director of PR Pandit, a PR firm synonymous in India with doing a lot of work in the space of lifestyle public relations. Thank you, Archana. Welcome to ComSpeak.
Thank you, Amith. Always a lovely, it's always lovely to engage with you.
Thanks. I'll start by asking the question we ask all our guests. Tell us about how you got into public relations more than 2.5 decades ago, maybe 3 decades ago. Tell us the story behind that.
Yeah, well, frankly, it was 1990, so I'm fairly old now. But PR became my passion after my first job. I responded to an advertisement for a market research opening at a hotel company, only to be told at the interview that the market research role has been dissolved. They offered me a job of a public relations manager instead. And I'm saying, what does PR mean? I've just read one line in Kotla during my master's in business economics. And I'm saying, what does this mean? But, I studied the manual. I liked the role. I sort of said I was reporting into the director of sales and marketing at the local hotel at the Hyatt Regency, and had a dotted line to Singapore, to the comms team there for the group. And so 2 years went by in a fly. It was a marketing communications role, which included supervision of graphics and collateral development. So I learned a lot: hotel events, media communications. I had an opportunity to really work on a new advertising campaign that was being rolled out for the hotel as it was being refurbished. Learned my passion for art really stems from there as well. So I've never looked back since. And I moved into the consulting business only thereafter.
Interesting. So tell us about how that move happened. How did you move from working in marketing communications at Hyatt Regency in Delhi to joining a PR firm where you began as almost one of the first employees? Tell us that story, please.
So I met Prema when I was at the Hyatt Regency, Delhi, and she used to run a small magazine, and it was a city guide. So it was important that the hotels, events were listed in there, and we sort of used to meet periodically, and she shared with me her plans to set up Genesis PR, sorry. And that's, I said, well, yes, 2 years into this role, I'm more than happy to jump in and try something new. I was confident about where the industry was headed, the opportunities that were showing up. There was IPAN at that point of time, Perfect Relations, Good Relations. Those were and Roger Pereira, 4 different firms that were around at that point of time. And I think there was promise because the sector was opening up. Let's say the economy was opening up. Insurance deregulation was on the cards and things like that. So auto industry was beginning to invite sort of private players. So there was action in the economy that we thought would be a great opportunity to develop the PR consultants.
Right, interesting. And there you spent about 6 years starting out as one of the first employees. And then 6 years into working at Genesis, you decided to branch out and start your own venture, own firm. How did that happen? Why did you decide to start your own firm, and why did you name it PR Pandit? Tell us that, please.
Okay, so 5.5 years after working with Genesis PR, as I mentioned, I started in the hotel industry. So my passion was always consumer PR. And so it's been 23 years since I started PR Pandit. And, it was really to do benchmarking work in consumer PR work, because if you look at it, we had learned about PR by reading global case studies and looking at them as the final frontier, right? So you learn so much, and that had developed so far ahead in consumer PR. But I thought that's where it's going to be a challenging, because most of the other work that I did at Genesis and earlier was very corporate in focus. You put out a press release, you pretty much held a press conference, etc. So that's where I started thinking about what is it that we could do. It was named PR Pandit because I didn't want to do another relations. Certainly wanted an Indo-Western name that people all over the world understood. Pandit had just come into the Oxford dictionary at that point of time. So it was very clear that people would understand it. And I wanted it to have a certain stickiness. And I felt that PR Pandit would have a lasting recall. So we started in sort of at that point of time being slightly cocky, but yes, I think the PR guru or PR Pandit sort of was very easy to relate to and to sort of say, hey, listen, it left no second guesses as to what your business may be. And your relationship with consumer brands began at that point of time, whether it was Asian Paints or VIP bags. And really, in very early days in 2002, 2003, we started working with some of the brands like Moët Hennessy and Swarovski and things like that. And our luxury portfolio obviously then grew, or the global brands as they started coming into the market in 2007, 2008, if I would say, then those got added to the portfolio.
Well, no, thanks. This is helpful to get a perspective of how you began and what went into the founding blocks of your company. I'll move from talking of a little bit of history to talking of campaigns. The bloodline of PR professionals are working on exciting campaigns, and you would have worked on hundreds of campaigns over the last 3 decades. I'm going to ask you 3 different questions. The first one is, tell us about one communication campaign that really stands out for you from the many you have worked on. I mean, there are many, I'm sure, but one that stands out for you that you're proud of, and people watching this show can look it up, learn about it, and say, wow, here's a cool campaign I got to know of, and it was worked on by PR Pandit. Tell us one about that, please.
I think what put us on the map really, both globally and in India, was our work on Savlon. That earned us the Cannes sort of lion. So we are proud to say that PR Pandit is the only firm in India which has a gold PR lion to its credit. And that campaign was extremely, extremely relevant and remains relevant to date, of how is it that you have to inculcate an understanding for the relevance of hand washing. Now you think about it. Today we're talking about hand washing in this era of COVID, but this was to address the need amongst children because they suffer from a lot of dysentery and many of them meet a very fatal end because of a lack of hygiene. So it was really aimed at getting them at the grassroots level to understand the relevance of hand washing. And so we're very proud of our efforts there.
Thank you. I'll talk of 2 other campaigns that I'd like to hear from you about. Tell us about one campaign that you really put your heart, mind, and soul and worked on it to make a big bang, but it didn't really show results the way you expected for whatever reason. But tell us one campaign that you're really passionate about, but did not have the results like a Savlon chalks had for you all. Tell us about that, please.
Okay, I won't name the client if you don't mind, but I will talk about the essence of the campaign. The essence of the campaign was really to sort of provoke audiences into thinking about an issue. And therefore, thereafter, stage 2 was to inspire them, and stage 3 was to empower them, right? That's how the campaign was developed. Now, at the provoke stage, we said, okay, I think digital's come of age. Let's do a Twitter poll around it. We put up Twitter poll. It was sensitive questions, but let's say the big columnists and very, very evolved personalities took that amiss. It took that amiss to the extent that we had to sort of, and the company that we were working with said, okay, let's just pause it. Let's not go ahead with it on Twitter. We ran the same thing offline. We got results that we were expecting would light up Twitter, but it didn't happen like that on Twitter. So I think it was still early days for people to understand Twitter quite the same way, and hence they took our questions amiss. And so that's something that I still feel that, oh my God, that would have been so much more powerful if people had understood it the right way. It would have really provoked a lot of people. While we did the balance, we ran it with a traditional research firm, found got the findings, and then populated that across media. So that campaign continues. It's now in the empower stage.
Okay, thanks. The last campaign question before we move to some other topics to discuss. There are campaigns I'm sure you admire globally and in India that stand out for various reasons. There was one such campaign that stands out for you. Name the brand, name the campaign that you did not work on, obviously, but you admire that campaign or that brand for what it did.
I think if I look at it, I've been part of juries, and every time I'm part of jury, I look at it as a learning experience. And so some of those campaigns stick in your head. I distinctly remember not, reading about a campaign which was selling tampons embedded in a book. It apparently it became the Cannes Lion Grand Prix winner. And it's how a tampon book outsmarted the law to make a change, specifically tax on feminine hygiene essentials. It's in Germany, where it was there was a luxury tax that had been imposed on tampons for some weird reason, right? So it was classified as maybe art or caviar or maybe truffles, right? At that level rather than a daily necessity. And hence, very cleverly, the agency went on to put that into a book, so it would be classified as a book and not as a luxury good. And they were able to sort of reduce, therefore, the taxation on that item. So, I mean, those sort of campaigns which actually help society really do sort of, light up a certain sort of desire to want to do, similar work. I've read a lot of other where makeup brands have supported domestic violence. So, how foundation can cover scars, and it's about then don't use it. Don't use it to cover up scars. Come out and, stand up, raise your voice against it. Those sort of campaigns certainly is something that you said, okay, I would like to be associated with something like that.
Right. Thanks for that. We'll now move away from campaigns to a few other questions about the PR business in the country.
Okay.
What do you see are the biggest challenges for the world of public relations in India in the next couple of years?
Challenges. I think challenge number one will always remain talent, for at least in the agency side. How is it that we are able to present ourselves as worthy employers, which give an opportunity for young people, a lasting career opportunity. That'll always be something that will be an issue. I'm surprised that young people don't look at this as the best career opportunity, at least as I think of it. The second would be to get a little bit more regard in the eyes of your own client. It's a continuous process. I'm not to say that the clients don't respect us or anything, but I think the value chain that we need to climb, there is a long way to go in that. We do read reports from consulting firms, etc., and we are perfectly capable of doing that kind of work as well. But somehow we don't get remunerated at the same level, and hence are not able to attribute enough time to do that kind of work. It's not about capabilities, it's about the allocation of time, because you've got to be mindful about what you're earning. So I
Right.
think those two become really issues, at least on the consulting side. In terms of the profession, I think, yes, it's a digital world out there. So how are we going to ace that? How are we going to map transitions from the sort of the print and the traditional way that we've been doing PR to acing PR in the digital world. So, how are we going to use podcasts? How are we going to use your own channels
Right.
for different brands to communicate and engage with different stakeholders?
Right.
Those are going to be critical. I mean, today, a journalist is an influencer first and an author second, right? So that influencer who's able to put things out very swiftly on a tweet or on Instagram or on LinkedIn becomes very, very relevant stakeholders for us to influence and manage. So if we are able to work that out, I think anybody would come on top.
Right. Thank you for that. I'll move from the professional to the personal for a couple of moments. Question one, tell us about your growing up years and your childhood, where you grew up in, how was your childhood like? So we get a different perspective to the Archana Jain we otherwise know at the workplace.
So I'm a military brat, as they say. And by virtue of that, I was educated across the country. Some very, very formative years in a place called Shillong in the state of Meghalaya, and then university in Delhi. So I think what I'm very comfortable with is various cultures. Uh, you know, so travel was a very relevant part of growing up years. Meeting new people and sort of always being able to adapt to change, I think just comes naturally if you've grown up in that manner.
Right. What do you do to unwind? How do you spend your leisure time beyond work doing some fun things? Tell us more about that.
Okay, I have a garden, so I do a fair amount of gardening. Just making sure that there are plenty of relevant fresh vegetables and seasonal plants, flowers in the garden takes up a lot of time. I have a passion in pottery as well. That is, it's slightly on the back burner, but hopefully I should sort of get back to it sooner than later. But honestly, otherwise, it's travel, and travel for not business but for leisure is something I certainly indulge myself in. I mean, I'm happy to carry my laptop onto the beach to enjoy that holiday rather than not be able to go. And I have no qualms. I sort of it's been years since I think 2002 was the last time I would have traveled without being connected, because I was away in Tibet, so I did the Mansarovar trek and there was no way that I could have carried a laptop because there was no phone connectivity, let alone internet connectivity at that point of time.
Right.
So, but after that, I'm happy to carry my laptop, put in a couple of hours in the evening. But yes, I've got to have my holidays. I've got to have, go out for dinner and sit by, go and visit the museum in the day and birth the midnight oil at night. No problem.
Right. Before we come to the end of the interview, the last two questions. You've had, from what I understand, two bosses in your first and second job before you became the overall boss in the future. Yes. Tell us about one learning each from these two bosses you had in your first two jobs. If there's one learning that stands out for you that has helped you in your long career, what are those?
Yeah, my first boss taught me never to say no. So he said, well, take on anything, anything that comes your way. Learn it as you go. And I think that stood me in very, very good stead, So sometimes, you get an opportunity, let's say, to pitch for a segment that you may not be so comfortable with. It's not like, something that you've been exposed to, but I don't feel intimidated by that because of the early years there. And my second boss framer taught me networking and the relevance of networking. I don't think I'm the best at networking, but certainly appreciate the value of networking.
Right. Thank you for that, Archana. The last question before we move to the rapid fire. There are tens and hundreds of youngsters aspiring to get into careers in communications, in public relations across India. What is your message for these young people who want to get into public relations in the 2021, 2022 time that we now live in?
I think the profession offers the best opportunities for young talent. It welcomes and respects advice from young practitioners, I've seen that. I've seen that with CEOs, managing directors being in the same room with young people. And they're very happy connecting with the youth on the table, around the table, if you're able to give them the right advice. So, which other profession allows you to work with top management who are spokespeople? Think about that, young people, when you're getting out. We engage with senior and top editors. And I don't think there's any other profession that offers such a sharp learning. But I would also caution you that PR is not spin doctoring as you think. It is about telling a good story to the right people. It is long term. It is not just one glorified launch, but it is about building and sustaining a groundswell of brand support to change consumer behavior or to build appeal. It is obviously extremely proactive in idea generation and responsive in crisis management.
Right. Thank you. That was really insightful and helpful to know. Thank you for your time on this main interview. Before we move to the last segment, which is the rapid fire,
Okay.
I'll give you 5 seconds to breathe. We have 10
Can I get
questions.
a Hansa like coffee with Karan on this?
Not exactly. This is a simpler version of that. 10 questions in less than 100 seconds. And let's hear it out from you. What is your most trusted brand?
I think Google.
Okay. Which is your one book you recommend highly to everyone you know that they should read?
In these days and times, I think I haven't read one on COVID, but on cancer is The Emperor of All Maladies by Siddhartha Mukherjee. Oh my gosh. It gives me goosebumps.
Okay. What's your favorite cuisine?
Italian.
Okay. What's the one gadget that you always need by your side?
By my side, I think my computer more than my phone, I think. Yeah.
Okay. Name one
I can take the calls on the computer, which...
Right. Name one professional role model that you really look up to.
Does it have to be in PR?
No. It can be anybody, anywhere. Doesn't matter.
Angela Merkel. That.
Okay. Name one Indian communicator you admire.
I think Meenu Handa, for what she's, we are so proud of her achievements.
Right. Tell us your most happening holiday destination, one you prefer to go back to again and again. Anywhere in the world.
I'm Italian. I'm almost half Italian at heart, okay? So I said Italian food, and so it's got to be Italy for sure. And I hope you were up and cheering for the Italians last evening.
I wasn't. Describe Archana Jain in 3 words.
Secular, disciplined, and hardworking.
If you would write a book on your life's journey, what would you call it?
A publicist at heart, always.
Okay. And the last one, what have been your key learnings and takeaways from the last 12, 15 months that all of us in this world have been working from home? What are those 3 learnings for you that stand out?
3 learnings. Okay.
I'll repeat the question. Maybe I made a mistake. I should have said one learning. Tell us one learning in the last 12, 15 months that you have really come out with strongly.
I think to be able to trust people to work from home.
Okay. Great. Thank you so much, Archana. It was lovely talking to you. And I look forward to meeting you in person soon when things open up. For those watching ComSpeak, that was Archana Jain, the founder and managing director of PR Pandit. I hope you enjoyed listening to Archana as much as I did asking her these questions. Thank you.